It's time now to take a look at what's making headlines in today's newspapers. And for that, I'm joined in the studio by Alison Sargent. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Exie.
The French papers today still very much dominated by the hardline immigration bill that passed this week after seriously exposing divisions within the ruling party.
Yeah, that's after it was supported by the far right. Emmanuel Macron went on television last night to defend this immigration bill. A right-wing paper, Le Figaro, sums it up pretty well with their front page headline, Macron trying to reassure his left wing. How did it go? Well, not so well if you ask a left-wing paper, Libération. Their headline today, The Great Denial. They write, despite the far right crying victory, despite one of his own ministers stepping down in protest and criticism from within his own party, Emmanuel Macron continues to fiercely defend this immigration bill. The paper points out that he even had the audacity, in their words, to say it was a defeat for the far right. Meanwhile, L'Opinion also writes that Macron is, as always, refusing to back down here. They write that he is fully accepting that he's alone in this, and he plans to, proceed in solitude for the rest of his presidency. In this front page cartoon here by CAC, we see Macron explaining his strategy with the immigration bill. He says, this law is like a vaccine. We inject a little bit of the far right so that we avoid getting the sickness. Many on the left, though, would argue that in this case, the vaccine is as bad as the sickness.
Okay, well, Alison, we're turning now to Iran, where a rights group is reporting that a former victim of child marriage has been executed after she was convicted of murdering her husband.
You see her photo here on the front page of Italian paper Corriere della Sera. Her name was Samira Sabzian. She was a mother of two. She was just 15 years old when she was forced to marry an abusive husband. The paper points out that in Iran, women cannot seek divorces even in cases of domestic violence. Police tend to bring women back home if they ever run away. Now, Samira killed her husband in 2013. She'd been in prison for the past decade and was hoping to get a pardon. We read in the website Iran Wire, which is an independent website run by Iranian journalists, they say that, under Islamic penal code, those accused of murder are all sentenced to death. The victim's family, though, can reject that death penalty and instead opt for financial compensation. But in this case, her husband's parents chose to have the death penalty carried out. They could have saved her. They chose not to. The website cites the rights group that reported her execution, saying, quote, Samira Sabzian endured years of gender apartheid, child marriage, and domestic violence. Today, she became a victim of an inefficient and corrupt government which sustains itself through violence and intimidation.
Okay, well, moving on now to a major change in the media landscape in Poland. Its public broadcasting station, which has, for the past 8 years, been criticised for spouting government propaganda, has been temporarily taken off air.
Yeah, this is just one of the many changes taking place in Poland since the centrist government led by Donald Tusk took power last week. Now, for the past 8 years, as you said, Poland's state media, TVP, had really come to be seen as an organ of the former government led by the right-wing Law and Justice Party. On Wednesday, though, the culture minister announced he had gutted all of its management positions as they worked to depoliticize it. A huge shift in Poland. A tabloid Fact is talking about how Tusk is shaking up the TVP. Last night, for the first time in 8 years, there was no nightly news broadcast on the state channel. Instead, there was a brief statement from a newly appointed news anchor who we see here in Gazeta Wyborcza. He said they would have new broadcasts starting this Thursday, and he promised that those broadcasts would be clean water instead of propaganda soup. Now, the Law and Justice Party, though, is not taking this lying down. We can take a look at the New York Times. We see the party's leader and other politicians and supporters held a sit-in at Poland's public broadcasting headquarters to try and prevent the new management from taking over. To give you a sense of the vibe, one protester shouted, "We will not hand Poland over to the commies." The New York Times writes that it's really a possible harbinger of the battles to come as the Law and Justice Party tries to keep its grip on state institutions, because it's not just the state media. The courts have also been stacked with die-hard Law and Justice supported. So Donald Tusk really has his work cut out for him here. Many polls, though, are seeing this, at least for now, as a new beginning for the state media.
Well, it is the holiday season, Alison, a time, of course, that many people are buying presents for loved ones. The Washington Post, however, today, advising parents of young children not to go overboard on gift giving this season.
That's right. It turns out that having a lot of toys around isn't just overwhelming and messy and stressful for the parents, but it's not so good for the kids either. The paper spoke to experts on child development. They explained that having fewer toys around leads to deeper engagement with each of those toys, which then promotes more creative thinking. Now, to give you an example, they did a study by putting toddlers in 2 different rooms, one with 4 toys, the other one with 16 toys. In the room where there were only 4 toys, well, the kids spent more time with each toy and tended to get creative with them. For example, they might use a dump truck to gallop like a horse, or to maybe sip soup out of, that kind of thing. In the other room, though, they'd move on pretty quickly without engaging with each toy, so they tended to have a pretty short attention span. I'd say it's a pretty convincing argument to get fewer toys. It's also, of course, cheaper and better for the planet to buy less. And I'm guessing that this study would hold true for adults as well.
And as the mother of a young child, I can tell you that I absolutely agree with those findings. Alison Sargent with a look through the day's top stories in the international press. Thank you very much.